If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum leadership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome back to Freedom Unfolding. We are an inclusive, holistic community that offers education, options, and inspiration to find your truth, find your voice, and find your freedom. And I am so excited to be here with you today and for our topic this week. What we're going to be discussing is something that's really, it's near and dear to my heart. I'd say both personally and professionally. And it's my intention and my hope that this episode will offer you listeners some sort of insight and resource as to what our inner child is, and also to the incredible importance and the benefit that we can experience from working with him or her. And of course, as always, as we like to do here at Freedom Unfolding, I will be providing a tool that will help you to integrate this topic. And maybe today you'll be connecting with your inner child again or for the first time. So before we kind of jump into that, let me go ahead and introduce myself. I am Jillian Holper from Elemental Healing and Coaching. And I am a mother, a wife, a lover of life, who is a clinical hypnotherapist, empowerment coach, trauma specialist, and best-selling author that specializes in trauma-informed root work with women and children that allows the innate intelligence of the subconscious and the body to lead the way, and therefore turning struggle into serenity. And speaking of turning struggle into serenity, we can go ahead and just jump into this subject and our topic for today, and that inner child and inner child work. And I just want to say, while I was preparing for this podcast, I was looking through some various descriptions and just like resource and information around inner child work. And I found a website that I really resonated with its description and its content. And it truly, the wording feels very true and resonant with my own practice. And of course, to speak on inner child work, I suppose what we really need to do is to understand what or who even the inner child is. And what this website, it's called Harley Therapy blog for psychotherapy and counseling. What they said about the inner child is, the inner child reflects the child we once were in both his or her negative and positive aspects. Both our unmet needs and suppressed childhood emotions, as well as our childlike innocence, creativity, and joy, are still waiting within us. And I really like that description and how it talks both the positive and the negative, because so often when we talk about childhood or inner child work or childhood healing of any sort, we're often talking about the maladaptive behaviors or the traumas or difficulties that have come from childhood in terms of therapy. And it's really beneficial to also note that there's such a beautiful thing that we can draw from in our childlike nature. and maybe some of the joy that we had in various experiences. And there can absolutely be benefits of that, and play, and all kinds of different topics around that. And of course, for today, what we'll really be focusing more on, although I could probably do a whole separate podcast, and maybe somebody will at some point. I know that actually Free to Be Healed does quite a bit with, joyous child work, inner child work, and play and things like that, as do some of the other practitioners with freedom unfolding. But for today, we will be focusing more on, the hurt child aspects of us, of that inner child, and that inner child work in terms of that. And so I also wanted to read something that Harley Therapy blog had as well on the inner child work itself, and that is inner child work is work you do either by yourself or with a therapist to resolve the childhood emotions and experiences this inner child holds, as well as harness the joy, the innocence, and the confidence that were your birthright. And they go on to say that really inner child work is any form of self-discovery that helps you to access the child you once were, along with the experiences and the emotions that child was taught to repress. The general idea of inner child work is that if you make an effort to contact, listen to, and communicate with and nurture your inner child, you can find and heal the roots of your issues as an adult. And they use the word issues. That's not my wording. I might choose to word it a little different, but nonetheless, I really, really appreciate that. It's a very well said and well put expression of what inner child work is and can be. And I really want to invite you with this to just, as you're having maybe thoughts or feelings or memories that may or may not surface, if that does happen for you, or if you are trying to bring up something. I know often we do that when we're working with something. We try to kind of find some type of experience that we can relate to. And the invitation with this, to start out, especially if this is maybe your first time, working with anything with inner child work, the invitation would be to go with a little more gentle of a memory, or if you can, an unmet need that might not be connected to, the largest trauma in your life. So maybe some time that you remember on the playground when somebody took your ball, that might be a little bit different than, going with something that really, truly left you in shambles, for a length of time, or anything along those lines. So yeah, just the invitation is to go with something a little more gentle if you can, and just be with that to begin with. And maybe you can, work in the deeper stuff as you get more used to being with your inner child, and honoring it and feeling like what that is to go through that. So just an invitation to consider. And I really want to also really touch on the importance with inner child work, what the core of when there's an unhelpful experience or thought or feeling or belief or anything like that that's showing up in your life now that might be connected, or even a memory or a sensation that might be connected to your inner child. There's, at the core of this, there is always, always, always an unmet need. So what the inner child work in terms of, healing or transformation goes, when we're working with that unmet need, it's going to be a time that in your childhood that you it had an experience where you came away from that experience not feeling whole and complete. And quite often what happens there is that there's quite often, if not always or almost always, a nervous system activation that didn't get completed. And I've talked, did a whole entire podcast about that last. But what goes on from that is that the subconscious makes a decision from that experience. And within that decision, it's going to try to either avoid that experience because it feels like the need is not going to be met if you have that again, or it's going to develop a behavior to try to get that need met. And oftentimes it's going to be, it's going to get you through at the time, but as we take it through into our adult lives, we kind of carry that unmet need with us, and it starts, feeling like it's at least showing up in an unhelpful way or a way that we would rather be different. So just something to keep in mind, that oftentimes so much of our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, behaviors that are showing up in our adult lives are very, very often related to those experiences in childhoods where we just simply didn't have a need met. And that might be, in a really big way, or it might be in a much smaller way. Again, it might be, just a moment where somebody stole a ball out of your hand as a child and you really had your feelings hurt, and there might be something that developed out of that. And I'm not that would be funny or anything. I'm just saying that oftentimes people think that makes no sense, or why would they carry that with you? Consciously, you would have gotten over that, but we're talking about the body and the subconscious, not necessarily the conscious mind in terms of unmet needs. We're really talking about what the body needed, what your sense of self needed in that moment as a child. So where you were at that point, not where we're at now, from our perception. So when do we do inner child work? That is the question. And, I just want to say it can, and it does show up. It just shows up quite often for people, whether we're aware of it or not. And when I mention it just showing up, what I would say is that when we have a memory that just comes to us out of nowhere, maybe we haven't thought about it in years, quite often that can be, it is our subconscious literally bringing it to the forefront of our mind to try to help us in some way. And it could be a really happy, joyful memory, that, it's going to help us to get through some experience, or to anchor that in kind of subconsciously in some way and bridge through to our conscious mind. Or quite often we also have memories that, are not going to be helpful, or even just a sense. For instance, if we've ever maybe, been in a relationship where we had a significant other partner of some sort that wasn't getting back with us. Maybe we were trying to get a hold of them in some way and they just didn't get back with us as soon as we thought they should. A lot of the time that can be an experience where our inner child might come out, and you may have a memory of something, but you might also just feel like a hurt inner child come out. And so for instance, I have a client that I've worked with recently, and she said that she had a kind of similar experience with feeling like she wasn't getting the attention that she needed. And she literally felt like she was, I think she said like a 7 or an 8-year-old bratty little girl is what her words were. I would never use bratty because honestly, any child that's bratty really just has an unmet need. So, but this was her identification. And of course we worked with that. And, it's interesting because although she didn't have a memory, that was just her sense. That was her felt sense that she, wanted the attention. She wasn't getting it. And she was angry and she wanted to stomp or whatever that was for her, that kind of felt sense in her body. And so it can show up as a felt sense or as a memory. It could be that you all of a sudden have a flashback to, not being invited to a birthday party, and feeling like, you weren't good enough or wondering what was wrong with you when you were 7-year-old, that you didn't get invited to a friend's party. And now, you're not getting a call back and that comes up for you. There's a whole list of things, a whole host of things, maybe even an infinite amount of things that it can show up as. But, a memory, a felt sense. Also, oftentimes this can show up, so that's one of the ways. I would say the second way that it can show up is going to be in session. So often, somebody might come because they have, they're having anxiety or they're having a fear about something. And I'm talking both children and adults, this can happen. So if they're coming, for something like anxiety or depression, or some type of fear that's come up, what we would do is we start, we just kind of start talking about things, and quite often this inner child work comes up in session. And so we end up, going and being with the inner child, and we'll talk more about meeting that need in just a moment. And, the other thing that you can do, the other way that we can do inner child work outside of, it just showing up as a memory or felt sense, or happening upon it, or specifically going to, and booking a session to do inner child work. The other way that I would say is that you can set an intention to just explore your inner child and to purposely, spend some time being with it. So that's kind of the 3 main ways that I would say that I've seen it show up. Now, that being said, some important factors that I really wanted to talk about in terms of the inner child work that are going to be important to consider would be when you are actually doing the inner child work. So let's say, for instance, you have a memory or a felt sense that you feel like you just want to stomp up and down and throw a fit. Or maybe you have a memory of yourself throwing a fit or feeling like you wanted to and you couldn't. So what I would say is, if you just spend some time, the biggest encouragement that I would say for this, at least to begin with, is to really close your eyes. And rather than having your eyes open, when we close our eyes, it really allows us to get in touch more with our body and our felt sense. When we can connect to how we're feeling, the sensations that are going on in our system and our body around the experience, that really allows us to anchor into the inner child work and what is in your system that's showing up that wants to have the need met. And when I say that, when I say, closing your eyes and getting in touch with your body, I mean literally getting in touch with what's going on. Do you do you feel tight and like you need to clench your fists? Are you having a shortness of breath? Is it feeling like there's a lump in your throat? Do you have the sense that you are frozen or trapped, or that you want to run away. So just really getting in touch with your body and what's showing up in your body with that. And I really, really want to highlight the importance of, when you're getting in touch with those felt senses, of just allowing the senses to be what they are, not judging them, not asking yourself if it's true, if it's right or wrong. Am I making this all up? I will say, and I tell my clients this every single time we come into session and do this work, that the only requirement for clinical hypnotherapy, and that's when we're dialoguing and you're in that relaxed trance state, the only requirement for it to work is to go with the first thing that comes to you, no matter if it makes no sense, if you think it's completely unrelated. None of that matters. And it may seem like you get connected with your body and all of a sudden a box pops up and you feel like you're inside the box, or maybe even I've had like a client see a pink elephant, and that seemed, of course, completely unrelated. And once she allowed herself to really connect to it, it ended up being that she really wanted this toy in the store that she didn't get. And that it usually unfolds in little micro information to begin with. So I would just say, the invitation is to really try going with the first thing that comes to you, and just allow yourself to be with it. Just be curious about it, and really always staying kind of connected to the sense of what's next. So if you're somebody that is very visual, you might be having a very visual experience. If you're somebody that is more kinesthetic and you're more of a feeler, you might be really connecting strongly with the felt sense in the body, or what things felt like in the environment, and so on and so forth. And, there can be a mix of all that as well. And, the invitation is, even if you are, seeing a situation, imagining or remembering a situation, it really helps to, when it first kind of pops up, to get in touch with the environment around you. So to just kind of look around and see what you recognize. If you're able to see what the floor looks like, where you're standing, what the lighting may be like, and just kind of exploring that a little bit. And also, another important factor, invitation to consider, would be just to make sure that you feel, safe and capable of doing this, supported in some way. And this might be that you have, some, light that makes you feel really safe and supported, that you surround yourself with, or you might have some type of higher power that you ask to be with you through this, or even, a higher self, or, an energy, or anything at all that you can connect to that really helps you feel, that you're resourced in doing this. And if you are not able to connect with feeling resourced in doing this, the invitation is to just wait until a time that you do feel that way, or to find a practitioner that can hold the space for you safely, so that you are not having to do that yourself. So if you are feeling like you're able to do that, then you can really connect more into the environment. If you're able to, if you're seeing it and experiencing it first person, it's often helpful to look down at your feet and see what you notice about the ground, and kind of look around from there. If you're seeing it third person, you can try to look at the ground from where the scene is unfolding, if you're able to see it, or even if not, any details are helpful. And always, of course, again, connecting back with your felt sense, and what that younger you were experiencing. And you can, you're the one in control. You can pause the experience if you need to. You might even imagine that you have a remote there with you, that can help you to do that. And I would say another important factor to consider is just really recognizing your younger self and what his or her experience was, what his or her felt sense was, without judgment, simply with acknowledgement, only acknowledgement. And just recognizing and honoring and understanding what their experience was in that moment. And although for an adult it might seem silly, for a child to be so upset about somebody taking a ball, when we're 4 years old and that's our first time maybe in preschool, or whatever the situation is. I'm using a metaphorical example, but let's just say that you were 4 years old and you were on the playground, and you're new to the school, and somebody comes and takes a ball out of your hand, and you just feel so alone and scared and frightened. That is incredibly impactful for a young little child. And it's really important to just recognize and honor what's going on for our little selves without judgment. And, what's going on in their system, what's their felt sense, what was their decision that was made from that experience. So what was the need that was not met, and what was their decision because of that? And I'll say that quite often, my observation and my own experience, there's some sense of, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, is almost always attached to it at the very, very core. It might be, life isn't safe, because, and I'm scared, and there may be a sense of safety, but even oftentimes underneath the sense of safety there's a feeling of abandonment or something along those lines. And of course, attached to abandonment would be the feeling of not being good enough or not being worthy in some way. So that might help for you when you're trying to connect with what that is. And another thing to consider with inner child work is that conversation can be so helpful. And you might even, you might speak with words, but there might also be a felt sense that you're just, you're able to communicate through feeling, that you're recognizing and communicating with your younger self. If, in this hypothetical situation, it would be your 4-year-old self, and kind of pausing what's going on around, and really taking the time to understand and just be with whatever that little 4-year-old needs in that moment, and understanding what the decision was that 4-year-old made, and what did they need in order to feel whole and complete. So again, we come back to that unmet need. What was the unmet need? What did they need to feel whole and complete? And, that might be, they might say, I needed somebody to play with me. I needed to feel included. And what would that sense of inclusion have done for the 4-year-old? Would that make them feel loved and for them to know their worth? And if so, the focus is on letting our inner child know that they're whole and complete regardless of what's going on. And we can often, as our current version of ourselves, we can often hold that space for our child and let them know that they are whole and complete just as they are. That, it's nice to know and to be included, but, we can give them that felt sense that no matter what, they are worthy and that they can enjoy their own company. And quite often it does show up in inner work that we can hold the space for ourselves. But, also I've had clients feel exhausted that have done inner child work, and they feel like, maybe they need a higher power or their higher selves to come in and kind of help facilitate that too. And, that's fine as well. If that's what resonates with you. The idea is that it's not so much the parent or the child or the friend or the whoever that needs to fill that space. It's really that we get that intrinsic space filled and fulfilled in our inner child's system and their body and their understanding, so that they can make a new decision. And you can, if you need, as I said, you can dialogue with them and just ask them, what do you need to feel whole and complete, and how can I support you? And maybe you have a conversation with them, or maybe you give them a gift of some sort, that helps them, or maybe you let them know that you'll always be there for them, or whatever that is, whatever they need in that moment. And again, just trusting the first thing that comes to you. And the next step would be definitely to allow them to understand once they feel whole and complete, and kind of making sure that you check in with them and their feelings. And it can be yourself if you're experiencing that first person. And you can sometimes even feel safe to step into your own little body to make sure. But really making sure that there's that felt sense in that experience, at least, of feeling whole and complete. And from that felt sense of feeling whole and complete, what is the new decision? So perhaps where the decision might have once been, nobody wants to play with me, I'm not good enough. Maybe the new decision now is, I am good enough just how I am. And from that feeling, I will, I'll find the friends that are best for me to play with. So it can be, again, this is just an example. It can be a lot of different things. And then the very last thing, would be kind of a two-part, and integrating you and the child. So your current self and the child that's whole and complete now in some way. And this might be hugging, it might be holding hands, it might be exchanging a gift. Again, whatever comes to you is just fine in that, but having a sense of really taking this aspect of yourself whole and complete with you. And then having an understanding and maybe asking yourself the question of, how does this change things going forward? In what way would things have been different for me, as a child, and what am I taking with me that's going forward? And I often, when I'm doing sessions, I'll use what's called timeline therapy, and I'll kind of encourage the client to imagine that now you're taking this kind of new timeline, that you're drifting up above it and moving forward into this time and space, and finding that as you arrive, that the old timeline and the new timeline have intersected, and that you carry with you all the benefits, all that's helpful from the old timeline, but now anything unhelpful has been dissipated, and now you have only what's helpful and resourceful, and the feelings of whole and completeness with you. And that might be something that you want, that resonates with you. And once that's happened, there could be some type of element that is important for you to take with you going forward. And this might be an actual physical anchor, something that you need to do, or something that the child, wants you to do in order to really anchor in the experience. It may want you to, it may want you to go do jumping jacks. It could be totally silly. It could make no sense. It might give you a picture of one time I had a picture of a box that was just going to show up for me. And I was going to keep, this, thing that showed up for me. And it did. The box totally showed up for me. And it was a really profound moment when that happened. So, it often is a experience that really integrates all at once, and sometimes there's an element that you need to actually physically bring into your life, into your physical world, that you need to have to anchor into that experience, or a habit or a behavior to develop. So yeah. So, and I think that pretty much covers those important considerations. And I want to, and we'll get ready to do the offering, the tool, here in a moment. But I just wanted to cover, before we do that, the ways that this can impact your life. And I would say that it would be impossible for me to really cover all of them. However, if this is done fully, and that may be, incremental work, for the need to be fully met. But in the moment, if that child, that little aspect in that experience can feel whole and complete, at least in that experience, and make a new decision for that experience, if it's really done in a way that feels whole and complete, then really there should never be a need to revisit that experience in terms of that decision again. Now, what I will say is, and I've never had that happen. I've never actually had a client need to go back to the same exact decision and the same experience. Now, what I will say is, if there are, experiences that are a little more difficult or traumatic for us as children, oftentimes there may be several decisions that we took away. There may be several unmet needs in that experience. And not just as children, but as adults too, with relationships and things. And so what I will say is that that can show up. It's not that you'd never need to go back to that experience and do work with it again. It's just that really there should never be that when the need is met, the need is met. So that's really nice. There could be, another unmet need somewhere, but there's no need to, really dredge back through that over and over, which is really wonderful. And if you feel like that is showing up again, the invitation would be to work with a practitioner that, is experienced and especially trauma-informed, to do that work. And they can hold a space for you if it's, difficult for you to do that with yourself. So, or for yourself. And I can't tell you, if this is done fully, any unhelpful experience or belief or behavior or baggage really is able to meet that resolution. And, if, again, you can reach out to somebody if it's anything that you're having a tough time with. But really, this can change so much. As I mentioned, so many of our unhelpful behaviors, beliefs, triggers, interactions, so on and so forth, are really connected to little or even big for some people, or at least what seemed big to our younger selves, unmet needs. And these are considered, I know we talked about in the last podcast, but these can be those little T or big T traumas. And we all have had unmet needs from our childhood. Again, maybe not large unmet needs. Maybe we were fed and bathed and cared for. But that does not mean that every need that we ever had was met. Quite often they weren't. And it's not, I wouldn't call it a bad thing. But when it's showing up in an unhelpful way, just know that there is resource out there to help you to change it into something that can be helpful. So thank you so much for, staying with me through this and listening. And I hope that provided you some benefit. And we're just going to do a brief little exercise with connecting with our inner child. It won't be too long. Certainly I could spend just as long connecting with the inner child as I've already spent on this podcast, but I will not. I know we try to keep our podcasts somewhat timely. So the invitation is, I'll wrap up the podcast pretty quickly after this tool, and the invitation is you may just want to grab a journal and kind of jot down some things that stuck out to you about the experience, or if you have a voice recorder nearby, you may want to just record what your experience was. So also, this is going to be a time for you to close your eyes and relax. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're driving, I would say pause it and come back to it during a time where you can really relax and be intrinsic, and where it's safe for you to close your eyes and kind of be with yourself in a more relaxed state. And so to begin with, just allow yourself to find a comfortable place with your body, and it's perfectly fine to be sitting up so long as you're comfortable. You can lay down and relax if you'd like. And when it's comfortable for you, you can allow yourself to close your eyes. And to begin with, just focus in on your breath. And breathing in deeply. And breathing out fully. Taking in another full breath. And when you're ready, allowing the exhale to be full and complete as well. And you may find as you continue breathing that your breath travels to a certain place in your body, just allowing it to do so without trying to change anything or make it different. Just allowing the breath to be there and to support that part of your body, and allowing your breath to come back to its natural state. And as you continue to breathe and relax, just finding that with each gentle and easy breath, you're relaxing more with every sound of my voice, and even finding that any other sounds inside or outside of this space, that they too help you to relax even deeper and deeper relaxed. And as you continue to relax, allowing all of the muscles from the head and behind the eyes, the jaw and the neck to just soften and relax. Relaxing the neck and shoulders down through the arms and just letting go. Letting go of any tension or care and allowing the relaxation to move and spread down through the back, maybe even aligning every vertebrae in the back. All the muscles in the chest, the lungs, the belly, feeling very comfortable and relaxed. The relaxation moving and spreading, maybe even spilling down into the hips, relaxing the legs, the thighs, the knees, the calves of the legs soften, feeling very comfortable now, and all the way through the feet. Now the entire body from the top of the head to the tips of the toes is so comfortable and relaxed. And in this feeling of relaxation, just allowing yourself to become aware of a time as a child where you had a gentle, unmet need. Always going with whatever comes to you first. And perhaps you just even invite an inner child of yours at some age, whatever age comes to you first, to come in and be with you. Whatever your experience is just fine. But taking in that felt sense, how it feels in your system to be with the feeling of your inner child, or if you're seeing it, and whatever sense you are connecting with, just allowing yourself to deepen in to that sense, that experience of being with your inner child. And as you do, becoming more aware of the environment with this inner child, perhaps even looking down at the ground to see where the inner child is standing. What age are they? Anchoring into the experience with your senses. And perhaps even you want to invite in your higher self or some supportive energy that helps you and your inner child to feel safe and supported in this experience. And as you become more aware, just recognizing without judgment, just recognizing the experience of this inner child. What were they going through? And you may even want to ask them, or you may automatically know. Just acknowledging, beginning to understand what was their unmet need in this experience. What was their decision because of that unmet need? And what did this inner child, this wonderful version of you, what did they need to feel whole and complete in this experience. What felt sense did they need to take away in order to feel whole and complete in this experience? And becoming aware of how you, your higher self, or whatever supportive energy is there with you, what they can do to support the child experiencing that felt sense. And allowing them to experience that felt sense now in whatever way feels most supportive and harmonious. And finding that in some way you are beginning to integrate with this version, this image of this whole and complete child, and to where you can experience that sense of whole and completeness within you. And if there's something that they want or need you to do or to take with you in order to anchor the experience, becoming aware of that now as well. And understanding what is the new decision now that the need is being met. Where they once felt there was an unmet need, what is the new decision now that the need is being met? And how, in what way does this change things? And is there any way to, or anything that is beneficial to incorporate moving forward in your own waking, walking life? And as you prepare to return back to this time and space, finding that you're coming back in the most integrated and harmonious way, and perhaps even finding yourself traveling forward in that timeline that's most beneficial, noticing that ripple effect. Somehow things have changed. And as you come back into this time and space, any of the unhelpful thoughts, feelings, beliefs, behaviors, or experiences have just dissipated away. And you're carrying with you only what is helpful and supportive, feeling more whole and complete in this experience. Coming back fully into your body, anchoring in to your feelings in this time and space, breathing into the present moment here in the now. And as you allow your eyes to open with your next breath in, reorienting into the room, the time and space here and now, feeling wide awake, eyes are open, and you're feeling aware, grounded in this moment here and now. And having with you the awareness of what's going to be beneficial for you going forward. And in conclusion, our inner child can be and is very much a part of our daily lives. The benefits to developing a relationship or a deeper relationship with our inner child can be incredibly helpful, insightful, and empowering. So many of the limiting thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behaviors we experience are a direct result of our childhood experience, and those that are unhelpful can often be resolved through working with those aspects of our own inner child. I do want to recognize that this may bring up some resistance for some, and particularly for those who have experienced some traumatic things in our childhood. And we have, maybe at times been working to avoid. So if this work resonates with you, but you find yourself feeling uncertain about opening up to it on your own, again, my invitation would be to consider finding an experienced and trauma-informed practitioner that is able to hold that safe space for you. And although at times it can be natural, of course, to want to avoid discomfort from the past, all of my personal and professional experiences have led me to believe strongly that the true key to peace, acceptance, and resiliency is in recognizing, acknowledging, and compassionately understanding and honoring who we were in those experiences and what we needed in our body and our being to really feel whole and complete. When we truly understand the unmet need, we can find a way to meet that need, thereby being able to really shift that sense of struggle to an experience of more stillness and ideally, serenity. So thank you so much for being with me today. For more information and updates, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can email us at freedomunfolding@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Join our community every Thursday at 3:33 is when we try to get things uploaded by Arizona time. And Freedom Unfolding is here for you to support you in your journey to finding your truth, to find your voice, and to find your freedom. This is Jillian with Freedom Unfolding.